Thank you so much. First of all, my thoughts and my prayers are with each of you. As Samantha had shared a little bit ago, at the age of 27, that was my age, my husband and I, we had 3 children. We had everything that we ever wanted and more. Most importantly, we had love, the love of each other. Then he was diagnosed with cancer, a very rare cancer, one that only affected about 40 people throughout the entire world. I remember sitting in the chapel at the hospital the day of his surgery and praying, "Dear God, please just give me 10 years. Because if you give me 10 years, my daughter will be out of high school, my son will be going into high school, and my son will be half raised. He'll be 12. Jumping 10 years later, on my son's birthday, which was 10 years later, I was told that Vince was going to die. I remember praying, just please, dear God, give me till after midnight, then you can have him. Well, in the next 10 days, we thought we were having a miracle. Suddenly, Vince went off the feeding tube. He went off of oxygen. He only had like 3% airflow. He went to 97% airflow. He was eating French toast and strawberries. And his hospice nurse said, "Sheila, I think we're having a miracle." And I believed in that miracle. Then, the night before his death, he started sleeping more. We didn't know whether or not we should send my son to school because it was his first day freshman year of high school. He was going to Moeller High School in Cincinnati. And it was his father's and his dreams since he was in the 4th grade to go to Moeller High School and play football, not education, football. It was a very good education. But we didn't know whether or not I should send him or not. So in prayer, we got, okay, if we're meant to send Tony to school, then you're going to have to stabilize his blood pressure. You're going to have to give us a sign. Well, Vince's blood pressure stabilized. I thought that was a sign. Tony went into his father's room. He said, "Dad, I'm off to Moeller. Our dream has come true." And Vince made a noise like it sounded like, "I love you." That was the last noise, the last words to me that came from Vince. 20 minutes later, Vince, blood pressure started dropping. I am Catholic. Our priest was there. He said, "Vince, I want you to take God's hand through the gates of heaven into the Garden of Paradise." And with that, Vince died. He shed one tear. And I said it was a tear of sorrow and it was a tear of joy. One that he was leaving us. But nothing prepared me for the pain of losing my husband. I felt like somebody reached in my chest and pulled my heart out. It was a pain like no other. One minute I'm thinking, dear God, go ahead and take the children and I. Not that I would end my life, but take us because this is way too painful. There's no way we can endure this. The next minute, I'm thinking of Star Trek being beamed up like molecules. I'm like, oh my goodness, there is no way I'm letting anyone know that I'm losing my mind. Then the following minute, this was all in a 3-minute period, I remembered the words that my grandmother had shared with me after my grandfather had died about 5 years earlier. She said, "Sheila, it's a pain like no other. It's like somebody reached in my chest and pulled my heart out." She goes, "I pray every night for God to take me, but he must still have a reason for me to be here. So I'm choosing to go on living, value in every moment, but it doesn't mean that I pray every night for God to take me." That didn't register with me that day when she shared that with me, but that moment when I was in my grief and agony, that validated my feelings and emotions. It helped me to know that I wasn't alone. So I just said, "Lord, whatever you did to get Vince through his illness into eternal life, you've got to give to the kids and me so that we can get through this funeral and the rest of our lives." I remember crying more tears than that hit me in the shower. I remember having days where I didn't even think I could get out of bed. I remember days where I couldn't remember. I remember days stopping at a green light. I remember days getting on the expressway and driving where I thought I should have only been there in 15 minutes, an hour and a half later, realized I was in a different spot. Grief can cause those things. It causes us to be dazed and confused. It causes us to feel that we're alone. But what we want and what we need is hope, strength, and healing. So hope. Hope is a feeling, it's an expectation, a desire for something to happen. I wanted to feel better. I wanted my grief to go away, and I wanted it to go away quickly. Not that I didn't want to forget Vince, but I wanted to have hope. And my hope was that I could see him one day later. Strength. Oh, did I need strength? I don't know about you, but how many of you felt strong after a death? How many of you felt like you were totally exhausted and had no idea how you were even going to make it? I needed strength. Healing. I remember I had a widow that came into one of my groups and she said, Sheila, you have 2 weeks to fix me. Grief takes time. It's an ongoing process. So I thought today I would share a little bit about grief. Because for me, what I found was I had to listen to my inner voice. I had to listen to things that I felt I was supposed to do. And I would say if your inner voice is saying you need to get outside and breathe some fresh air, that's a good inner voice. If your inner voice is saying you need to stay at home, you need to not be, then that's not the right thing. Because our minds can be our greatest source of strength or the greatest obstacles. My strength is that I knew I had a choice about going on living, just like my grandmother had said. I wanted hope. I wanted strength. And I think that I had to go deep within to discover who I was and what I was going to be with the rest of my life. When your loved ones died, how many of you wondered, who am I? What am I supposed to do with the rest of my life? What is it that I'm supposed to do? So I first had to learn everything that I could about grief. I took it to prayer and I asked God, what is it that you want me to do with the rest of my life? At the time of my husband's death, I'd worked for Procter & Gamble. I was in sales. I was top 10 in the nation. I liked what I did, but I didn't love what I did. I needed insurance. I needed something to pay my house payment. I needed something to put food on the table for my children. But after his death, I wanted purpose and meaning. I wanted something where I could give back, and I wanted to be able to receive. So when I prayed, I got one day you'll have a bereavement center. I thought, bereavement, what is that? And of course, back then, we didn't have all these fancy gadgets that we do now. So I had to look it up in the dictionary. And the dictionary is, that little book that you turn. I don't know if our grandchildren know that. But so I looked it up, and part of the derivative for bereaved is rob. Well, I totally felt robbed. I wanted to grow old with Vince. I wanted to hold my hand with him. And I wanted us to die together when we were 99.9. That's what I wanted. But here I was. So I thought, okay, what do I need to do? I ended up meeting with an incredible man who's no longer with us. His name was Ken Zillinger. And he became my mentor. And he shared with me, Sheila, he said, what you want to do, he said, you're going to have to travel all over for this. And thus began my journey of Companions on a Journey. In going and studying grief, what I found is that it was affirming to me. And I would say in life, isn't it important for us to educate ourselves, to understand ourselves, to be ourselves? So today I'm going to start first with a little bit about grief to be able to help you. C.S. Lewis said, no one ever told me that grief felt so like fear. How many of you, when your loved one died, did you feel fear? What were some of the things that you felt? Anyone? Anybody feel alone? Anybody feel shocked? Mm-hmm. Was it hard to sleep? Did you cry more than you thought you could cry? Were your tears deeper? All those things were happening to us. That's because we loved. Grief is a journey. It takes time. And no two people, no two children will grieve the same. Feelings of grief are going to come and go. It's like a roller coaster. Many ups and downs. Grief can injure the heart. I once was told by a heart surgeon that hearts heal quicker from heart surgery than they do from grief. Our hearts are the core of us, the core of our very being. And when someone we love dies, there's many pieces of our lives that are broken. It's the relationships with them. But it's a true physical pain. Our lives change. We're no longer the person we once were. I was the wife. He was my husband. Think of the relationships that they meant to you. We're forced to take on a new identity. I had to write down widowed. That was hard. And for a bereaved parent, you say, how many children do I have? That's hard. Because sometimes the conversations are afterwards, tell me what happened. And for us sometimes, it's exhausting enough just to be in the shoes that we're in. But when somebody says, tell me your story, that's way too difficult. At least it was for me. And that's when I went to P&G and I said, I need time off. I need 6 months off. Well, at the time, they could not give me that. I had had a 12-week family leave act, and they wanted to promote me. They wanted me to do various different jobs for them. They go, Sheila, we don't want to lose you. And then I said, but I need time. I didn't want to go in to all my accounts and have to retell my story over and over and over again because I was physically exhausted. 10 years of cancer. When Vince died, a part of me died. Yet in my heart, I still felt he was with me. Grief is common. There's over 2,700,000 people that die each year, and that's about 7,400 to 7,500 people a day, 310 people an hour, and 5 people a minute. That's a lot. And in the United States, 1 in 15 children before the age of 18 will suffer the death of a parent or a sibling. And 18 to 25, that number doubles. So there's a lot of us grieving. There's a lot of suffering that comes with grief. There's the distress. There's the presence of the suffering. And that can only be known by us. Does anybody understand your grief? Do you feel that anybody does? It's just like your thumbprint. It's unique to you because their love was unique to you. So let's look at what makes up a person. First of all, there's the past. There's the life experiences. And I think we need to look at this for us and for other people that we have in our families who are bereaved as well, but particularly for us. And when you're looking at this, I want you to think about the relationships that you have had with your loved one and the many relationships that they have, because when we look at all these pieces, it's easier to understand why we are broken in pieces. So we have the family, we have the roles, we have the behaviors. They were used to our quirky ways, right? The culture, the relationships, the do things. I don't know about you, but my husband did a lot of different things. But when he became ill, there was a lot of things that he could no longer do. So I began to take on a lot of different roles. I had to wear the hat of being the budget keeper. I had to wear the hat of making sure that I had an income coming in. I had to make sure that we had insurance. I had to make sure that we used the toilet paper to the very last piece. There's the body. Our bodies, physically, spiritually, mentally, are exhausted. And then there's the political rights and the responsibilities, the debates that we have as couples, right? There's the do things. There's the secret life. And then the secret life is really, these are our lives. Does anybody really know what we did every single day with our spouses or our children or our loved ones or our parents? No, because your relationship was unique. So then there's the perceived future. So when someone dies, the loss of our hopes and dreams have changed. Doesn't mean that we won't have hopes and dreams, but they've changed. When I said I do, I had no idea that 19 years later I would be widowed at the age of 37. I had no idea that I was going to be the mother of 3 children and have to be the person who had to figure out everything that they did know. I'll never forget my son's first homecoming. And he didn't want anybody there but me. But guess what I didn't know how to do? I didn't know how to tie a tie. And he didn't want grandma or grandpa there because I think it was hard for him not to have his dad there to see him go out on his first date. So we had to go house to house, ringing doorbells until someone could tie his tie. So there's all the different relationships that we have. So all the aspects of a person when somebody dies are susceptible to being injured, to being damaged, to having a loss. The expressions of injury sometimes are the sadness. What are some of the things that you have gone through? What are some of the injuries that you feel that you have felt? And if you could just say those, I'll repeat them. But what are some of them? What do you feel that you have lost besides your person? Partner. Companion. Cheerleader. Friendship. Best friend. Sounding board. That's very good. Decision maker. Strength. Wisdom. Many different things. Often when we're trying to recover, we need to borrow the strength from others. However, I don't know about you, but how many of you in this room were caregivers? And how many of you were caregivers for 10 years? How many of you were caregivers for 5 years? For 1 year? So we stop to think of all those things. You probably were physically and mentally exhausted. During the time of my husband's illness, everybody wanted to help, but oh no, not for Sheila. I could do it all. And my husband really didn't want the help. He didn't want the help because sometimes he felt like then he wasn't the man of the house anymore. He didn't want someone to help us with our groceries, even though I didn't know how I was going to pay the bills. Even when people would come and say, we want to help you. His pride. And it was hard for me. But I didn't want anybody to know that. So I carried that silent grief within me. And so when he died, I was physically, mentally, and spiritually exhausted. How many of you felt exhausted after your loved one's death? That's common. We have to find new meaning. The transcendence. So I feel like I went from the physical relationship with my husband to the limbo of grief to the spiritual. I had to find a way that still connected him in my life. He was always in my heart and he'll always be in my heart. In fact, I think I love him today more than I did the day he died. That might be because he doesn't tell me I can't go buy something, you know? But grief. There's that physical, the spiritual, the social. So remember, body, mind, spirit, it affects us. So when we think about the body, we're exhausted. Grief is exhausting. It's as though when they compare it to a career, it's running a jackhammer for 8 to 12 hours a day. And that, could you imagine that? First of all, I couldn't imagine the shaking. But our lives are really shooken up when somebody dies. You know, it affects us all the time. So here we are trying to live in our minds and do things and trying to be and trying to receive, yet not knowing what we need to do. Have any of you had confusion of just not being able to think clear? Mm-hmm. How many of you, your sleep has been disturbed? It's a different life, isn't it? How many of you are afraid sometimes at night when you were alone? My mother made sure that I had an alarm system and had curtains on every window because we lived in the woods and I loved all the sunshine. But for the first time, at the age of 37, I had felt like I was all alone, even though I had 3 children. I felt like I went from my parents' nest to my husband's nest to then being this mother bird with 3 little chicks, and somebody pushed me out of the nest and I was falling. But I needed to flap my wings, and I needed to breathe, and I needed to know that I could survive. The process is continuing, and it involves many different changes. And there's natural and expected ones. The natural, I was widowed. That wasn't natural to me, but yet it is natural. Expected. I knew that someday he could die, but I thought we were going to have a miracle. I thought he would live to be old. The reactions to the loss, there's many different kinds. If you have to be the main provider, if you have to make the decisions. In one of our recent groups, I asked the people to write grief symptoms. And one of the symptoms was anger. And I said, so tell me about your anger. I am so angry because I had to go and buy a new lawnmower because I can't pull that crank thing. It wouldn't start for me. And now I have to cut the grass. I have to go down the hill. All these things I have to do, I'm angry. Angry. But that's one of the aspects of her grief. Many of us have many different aspects of grief. So it's unique, it's individualized, and it's our perception of grief. I don't know about you, but growing up, I had many people when somebody died, or my mother had some miscarriages. A lot of times it would be, well, there was a reason. They're in a better place. It's okay. Well, when Vince died, it was not okay for me. My being was not okay. I had to put my 2 feet on the floor and I had to breathe. Someone once told me, get up, get out of bed, wash your face, get outside. That was a chore. To dry my hair was a chore. Where I used to be, I can do it all. And I remember going to church one time and somebody saying to me, Sheila, come sit by me. I thought, oh, she can tell I'm an emotional basket case. And after church, she said to me, I needed to sit by you because I needed your strength. Oh, she had no idea I had no strength. I was like a wet noodle. But when she said that to me, it empowered me. I thought, wow, if she thinks I have strength, then maybe I do have strength. And then I thought of that little book, the little engine that could. I think I can, I think I can, I know I can. I thought, I'm going to do this. I still cried, but I'm going to do this. And that song, I Am Woman, Hear Me Roar? Well, that's me. I am woman, hear me roar. You have to find something that lifts you, that fills you, that feeds you. Find that song, find that poem, find those inspirational things. But it requires a lot of work, spiritual, emotional. So who are the people that support you? I really felt like I didn't have really a big support team. I had my mother and my mother-in-law, but then I had my children. Yes, I had my brothers and sisters and my brother-in-laws, but they weren't there because they had their own family lives, and they were grieving too. So again, being the caregiver of my husband while he was ill and being the mother, then I became the caregiver of the entire household. Even though I was doing it before, I didn't have my cheerleader. I didn't have my sounding board. I didn't have my best friend. So I was physically exhausted. But I am woman, hear me roar. I could do it. The cultural differences are different. There's so many different cultures depending on our belief system, our religious, in the area that you live. Everybody grieves differently. And I think it's important for us when we're looking at how we are grieving to see how our families grieved when they were grieving. How were we raised? Because a lot of times how we're raised, they're mirroring the reflections to us of how we are supposed to be. When I was a child, at the age of 2.5, my great-grandmother said to me, when I get up to heaven, if your mom haven't had a baby yet for you, I'm going to ask God to send you one because you get everything in heaven. Well, the month after my grandmother's death, my mother became pregnant with my sister Julie. Wow. It was everything you ever wanted and more. Adorable, adorable baby sister. When I was in high school, I had friends that had died in different car accidents. And reflecting back, and let me just go back for a second, when I was 5, my father almost died. He was in a coma for almost a month. And I remember walking in a room and I saw my parents and my grandmother and my mother praying. And they were talking out loud, and it's like, who are you talking to? You know, and they said, we're talking to God, we're talking to Jesus. You know, we're asking him to help your dad because he could die. That's the first time I heard the word die. But I saw them having hope and belief, so that helped me. When I was a teen, but a couple months later, when my father did recover, my mother had a nervous breakdown. It was just way too much for her. So for years, my mother went every week to therapy to get stronger. She ended up becoming a therapist to be able to help people. So I was blessed. But when I was a teenager, when my 2 friends died, there was fear. Then I had a teacher that died. Then I had a boy in my class whose father died of a heart attack. And then another person died. And I'm like, oh my God, don't let anybody in my life die. Please, please. The fear was deep within inside of me. I didn't have anybody to say, I am afraid. And I was afraid to tell my mother, I think. It took me years to discover this. I was afraid to tell her because I was afraid I was going to push her back. Because her grief had been too much for her, just the thought of losing my father. So I had to find a way to balance it on my own. So my greatest fear became my children's reality. And I think all my grief at that day, the day that he died, I think I felt that hole because then I realized what my journey had been through life. So for all of us, bereavement's the state of suffering a loss. Usually it's the most profound in the first year, but it can also be the second year, the third year, the fourth year. I remember the first year thinking, okay, I made it through it. I've done it. But then I think the second year, all of a sudden, it's like, this is with me. I miss him more. Or I gained the independence of thinking, okay, I can do this, that I wanted to do more. But I had to go deep within to discover who I was and what I wanted to be when I grew up. And I think each of us has to do that. We have to become present to the present moment. What is it that you need? What is it that you desire? Well, for me, after he died, when we were on such a tight budget, and I did leave my job at P&G, I knew that I could have several years that I could take off. I started doing it, but I'm going to fix my house. I'm going to rearrange everything. That kept me busy. It also gave me control. Control that I would be able to have control over something I can control. That was easy for me to say, huh? But I think when someone dies, we feel like we have no control in our lives again. So I had to find a way to control so I could fix my house up. I could go shopping. But we have to watch when we go and do these things because we have to do everything in moderation. Like I could shop to kind of fill my pain, to soften it, but then it would come back. The task of grieving, Bill Warden is a great bereavement specialist, but we have to learn ways to accept the loss. We have to experience the pain, and we have to adjust to a new life without them. Now, remember when I said you had the physical relationship, the limbo of grief, and the spiritual relationship? I found ways that I could carry him with me always. To this day, if I see a yellow rose, I think of Vince. Are there things that you all have that help you to still have them with you every day? What are some of those things? Music? Pictures? Picture on your phone. Sense. Birthdays. Anniversaries. Happy anniversary. Aw, a day full of love. Those special days. Holidays. If we have Christmas or Hanukkah, Christmas for me, he bought all the ornaments. Then I had to pull those out. That'll be a story I'll share in a little bit. But I think we have to find ways to reinvest our emotional energy. On my anniversary, my first anniversary, my husband, while he was alive, for Mother's Day had bought us a baby grand piano. Well, we had 2 houses. There was no way that we could afford 2 house payments and a baby grand piano. So I refused the piano when it came. First, I didn't know that he had ordered it. But after he died, I remember my son saying to me, "Mom, I can't believe that last gift that Dad wanted to buy you was the piano. Why didn't you take that?" And then I had to talk about finances with him. But on the first anniversary, there was this baby grand piano, a little petite one, and it was playing itself. And guess what I did? I bought a piano. And it still plays itself because I haven't learned how to play. But that was my first anniversary gift. I can't afford anniversary gifts like that. But it's okay for us to do something special for ourselves on those days. It's okay to think about them, to cry because you miss them, to hold your heart. For me, I changed my wedding ring and had a slide necklace made. You know, the different things that I did that I could still connect with him. Because on those anniversaries, those are days that we shared our love, professed our love. So sometimes those days are hard. So this here I thought would be very good for you all. And I wish somebody would have shared this with me in the beginning. When we look at this dual process model, the round circle, I want you to see that this is everyday life. And then you've got all the loss work. And then you've got all the restoration work. So you have the grief work, and then you have attending to new life changes. You have the intrusion of grief. How many of you think about your grief every day or your loved one every day? Many of you. The new things that you have to do. What are some of the new roles that you've had to take on? Paying the bills. Oh, love it. But that's something new. Soccer coaching, correct? Mowing the yard. I know a man that after his wife died, his wife was a seamstress and sewed. And to be close to her, he learned how to sew. Actually happens to be that man over there, who is my husband now. So he does all my mending for me. Breaking bonds. You know, you have the breaking bonds that you're no longer one here physically. And then now you've got to go do all the roles or be able to tell people in that restoration. You know, we have the denial sometimes. Sometimes we think, okay, if I keep super busy, then maybe this isn't real. Maybe this is a dream or a nightmare, I would call it. I remember pinching myself because I thought maybe this is a dream. And if I wake up, maybe he'll be here. In fact, I have to confess, here I am 25 years later, and there are times that I think, what if this is a dream? And when I wake up, he's still here. Now, I know it's not, but I say that to you so that if it is 25 years from now and you're thinking that, that's okay. It's normal. It's normal. What I'd like to do now is, did we put those little papers on the table? Do you all have like a pen or a piece of paper? There is, let's go back to this one right here. So this everyday life sheet is one where you have these. I would like for you to tell me, and you could maybe write this down, what are some grief symptoms? And really share with me, what are things that you feel? And jot some of those down right now. Just jot a few things that you can think of, symptoms. Just take a couple of minutes to do that. I'm sure if you gave yourself the time, you would be able to name a lot of symptoms. Crying unexpectedly. What's some of the ones that you wrote down? And I ask you and invite you to share this because in your sharing, it's important to be able to name it and claim it. You know, like for me, I could say I had forgetfulness. I couldn't remember what I needed to do. And in sharing that, hopefully that helps somebody else to know, oh, that's a normal symptom. What's another one? Confusion. Confusion about what? Why? Confusion of why? Lack of motivation. Physical pain. True physical pain. Isolation. That's a big one. And what do you do for your isolation? Can you be in a crowded room and feel isolated? Yes. Many times I've had widowed people say to me that they felt isolated and they also felt like the rest of the world was in living color and they were in black and white. It's a very good one. What's another one? Indecisive. Yes. So to be in the right frame of mind when you have to make the legal decisions, the financial decisions, who's there to coach us? You know, even especially finances. Nobody ever told me that when somebody died, you had to go to Social Security and you had to fill out a death. Nobody told me that. Nobody even told me that I would have Social Security for my children. All those different things I had no idea. And then my husband always said, pay the house off, pay the house off. Well, in the process of selling the stock and trying to do that, the stock market crashed and I lost the money that I could have paid the house with. I had poor advice from financial advisors. But the way I looked at it, I already had lost the most important thing to me. That was my husband. It was money. I could survive. I did before, and I could do it again. But those are the things. What were some of the other things that anybody wrote down? Regretful. Wishing that you could have said something or done things differently. Mm-hmm. Lack of functioning as a whole. Mm-hmm. That's a big one. Any others? Anger. Anger about what? Mm-hmm. 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 So angry at God and also angry that people do not realize what you're going through. But I think sometimes our loved ones, they're put on that pedestal and we want them on that in some ways, but nobody appreciates us. Or they expect us to be doing things differently. Or we become, if we're a parent, we end up becoming the child because they're telling us what we need to do. But I think that lack of appreciation, nobody can get in our minds and tell us how we're supposed to be. I remember people, and my mother-in-law was one of them. I was having problems with my children, just correcting them. She walked in, she said, okay, and she slammed her hand on the table and she said, the grieving crap is over. And this was 2 months after he died. This was her son. And I'm like, first of all, it's not crap. It's real. And it's not over. And it's not going to be over. And then I remember months later, she goes, now, Sheila, you're young. You know, you probably will get remarried. Don't become stale toast. I'm like, don't become stale toast. I thought, oh my gosh. But then in my head, though, The intrusive thoughts were, see, they just want me to get remarried so they don't have to worry about taking care of my children and I. You know, they don't want me to be a part of their family anymore. They don't care. And I would go to them and say, my children need their uncles to be a part of their life. You know, and they would come, but not the way I thought that they should. My kids needed their uncles. And it wasn't until years later when my sister-in-law was diagnosed with cancer. And I said to my brother-in-law, I said, you know, nobody has any idea what you're going through. He said, you have that right. And I had no idea. So I could have allowed our family to be torn apart because I could have said, fine, they're out of our lives. They don't get it. But instead, what I told my children with the family was, let's call it ignorance. They don't have any idea. Their lives are going on. Yes, they may have lost a brother or a sister or someone that they cared about, but it wasn't the same as the relationship that I had with Vince. Because, see, there was a seed of love, and that seed of love intertwined beyond what I could even imagine. We became one. But when it's a brother or a sister, it's different, you know? But yes, and it's okay to be angry with God. I always say this, when you were married or your loved one died, did you ever have an argument or did they ever do anything to you that you were disappointed or caused you guys maybe to have that argument? Did you? Did you keep it inside of you? Or did you let them know that they hurt your feelings? Or did you let them have it? I do have a little bit of Irish in me. But I think it's the same way. If you're angry at God, then let him know. There's many times that I didn't think I was angry, but it would be like, okay, if I'm supposed to do this, you know, Vince, you took the easy way out. God, you allowed him to die, so here I am raising 3 children. I have no idea what I'm supposed to do. So you guys better be helping me right now. And it would all work out. But I had to get it out of me. I would like for you right now to just reach out and act like you're grabbing, and don't lean in on anything. Reach out and act like you're grabbing an imaginary ball. And grip as tight as you can. And this ball right here is grief. Grip tight. What do you feel? Tension. Pain. What else? Nothing there. Could we walk around like this all day long? Is it moving up your arm? Okay, wiggle your fingers. Wiggle your arms. Does that feel better? So when we have those moments where we're angry or we feel like they're not listening to us, we've got to find ways to move through it. So at Companions on a Journey, which is the organization I founded, we validate feelings and emotions. Exactly what you're doing right now, sharing some of the things, the symptoms, some of the ways that life has changed. How has life changed for you? What are some of the ways? Moved in with your daughter. That was good. So you became companions in some ways. Do you go to the movies still? Right. See, you guys need companions on a journey. Because one of our things that we do is we'll have like a movie night, or once a month we'll go to dinner. You know, we'll go to movies. We go to a comedy club. Sometimes we'll go to lunch. But I would say find people. People used to come up to me and say, what can I do for you? In my head, it's like, I have no idea what you can do for me. This is all foreign to me. There's not a template for this. But I wish now that I would have said, and this was what I did say, please pray for me. Because I didn't know how I was going to get the next minute. But now I wish I would have said, can I have a rain check? Can you call me in 6 months and ask me out to dinner or have coffee? I met this woman. She came up to me after church one Sunday, and she said, hi, I'm Holly. I wanted to know if you wanted to join the Bible study. And I'm like, oh, I cannot quote scripture. But I was hungry to have friends. I had taken care of my husband for 10 years. I took care of my husband. I raised my children. I went to work. I was top 10 in the nation. I tried to be a mother. I tried to be a daughter. I tried to be the best person I could be. And what suffered was the friendships. And I think my control when he was sick is I became top 10 in the nation so that I could go to as many accounts as I could, so I could meet people and share stories of our lives and hear their stories, so then mine didn't seem so bad. But when we came together afterwards, I just couldn't do that anymore. I didn't want to tell my story that he died. I didn't want to tell that. It was too hard. So for me, when she invited me to do that, I thought, fine, I'll go. For 5 weeks, there was illness. My daughter had to have something. I mean, there were so many things that went on that I couldn't get there. And finally, it's like, I'm getting there because I need friends. And what I found in that group is a group of women and men, and they shared their journeys. They talked about their pain. And you know what I discovered is I wouldn't have changed my life. I wouldn't have exchanged my life for what they were going through. I would never have done that. I was grateful then for what I had. And then I ended up having this beautiful new friend. And after the first time that we went out, she invited us to go to lunch. I took my daughter because I needed my crutch, because I was afraid. I guess I was afraid. This independent, successful woman, I was afraid. So I took my daughter with me. We went out to lunch. And the next day, this Holly calls me and she goes, "Hi, Sheila, this is Holly. Do you want to go out and play today?" And I'm like, oh, son of a sea cook. She is weird. And I go, "What do you mean play?" And she goes, "We can go to coffee. We can get your nails done. We can go for a walk. We can go shopping. What would you like to do? I just want you to know that I'm here to walk with you on this journey." That's what we all need. I didn't know that I needed it so badly. And to this day, she's still one of my dear friends. But I think we have to look for it. You know, if it's not coming to us, look at what we can do. You know, there's many organizations out there. There are church groups. There are Rotaries. There are retirement communities. There are over 50 group we have at our church. I mean, they go everywhere. I just can't afford it right now. I'm still working, you know. But, you need to find it. Or invite someone. Sometimes people say it's difficult to make a meal. I miss that. Well, is there somebody in your community or somebody you know that could use a meal? So make your most favorite meal and share it. And take it to them. Because then it's getting you out. But if you want it, then you might have to do the icebreaker of going for it. Don't be afraid. Don't turn down invitations either. And don't be afraid to give them. So a lot of times with grief, you'll have restfulness. You will become withdrawn and uncomfortable with being around people. Yet you don't want to be alone. Yet you feel alone. You have that distraction. Sometimes you become unorganized. How many of you have become unorganized? A good number of you. How many of you have a hard time completing tasks? I thought I had dementia. But then I realized that was a symptom of grief. That really helped me to know. I remember one day I was looking all over for the phone. Everywhere I could. It took me 20 minutes to find the phone. You know where the phone was? Underneath my armpit. Losing it, right? I remember the first grief group that I went to. It was a group of people who we had been in a group, when our spouses were ill, much probably like the Parkinson's Voice Project. And this was outside of the grief group. They decided to do it on their own. And we were sitting at the table and everybody was having a wonderful conversations. And they said, somebody wants to join the group. And one of the other persons said, well, I don't think we're ready to expand. Oh, and somebody else said, no, I don't think we are. And this was my first time. And I said, well, excuse me. I said, I know this is my first time to be here, but who are we to say whether or not somebody can join a group or not? Did we have a vote on being widowed? And you know what they said to me? We haven't voted you in yet. The next day I got my phone call, and they told me that they weren't ready to expand and that it was nice to meet me, but they decided that I wasn't a part of the group. Well, I already knew when they had that conversation, I was not supposed to be a part of that group. So I'm the misfit, and that's why I'm here today. I share that with you because people are going to say and do things to you, not thinking the impact of the pain that it can cause you. I didn't let that stop me. I had in my mind I could have, again, the greatest source of strength or the greatest obstacle. I could have said, whoa, rejected, abandoned, nobody wants me, I need to stay at home. Or I could think, wow, I am not like them, they are stuck, I need to find some place or someone, I am woman, hear me roar, to be able to move forward. I had a lot of crying. There's the forgetfulness, the sadness, the anger, the guilt, the mood swings. A whole basket of things, right? There can be the anorexia, the weight loss, or the weight gain. There can be the palpitations, the heaviness in the chest, the shortness of breath, the tightness in the throat, the inability to sleep. To this day, I still have a hard time sleeping. Lack of energy, exhaustion. And sometimes we can think we're seeing them. Well, I kind of think that those are, I don't look at them as hallucinations. I look at those as blessed moments. So when we have those dreams, that we vividly see them. When we have that scent of what the cologne that they used to wear. When somebody brings you the color flowers, or you happen to see a butterfly or a hummingbird or a beautiful sunset or what appears to be an angel in the sky. I call those blessed moments. Recently, I was at a lantern lighting. My sister Julie died in May of this year. She had had a 7-year battle to ovarian cancer, and I was one of my sister's caregivers. And I would fly back and forth from Cincinnati to Sarasota, Florida. And the last 4 months I was with her, and it was exhausting. But I was so glad I was able to be with her. So we did this lantern lighting, and I knew that I needed to do my grief work. I knew I couldn't be there to give to everybody else that evening. I had to put me on my to-do list. So I made my lantern, had my sister's picture, and I said to my husband, Tom, I said, I need a Julie fix. I need a Julie moment. Immediately, my phone rang, and it was her daughter in Sarasota giving me a call and said, Aunt Sheila, I felt like I needed to just give you a call and say hello. That was my Julie moment. Now, somebody might say, oh, that was a coincidence. I don't think it was. The spiral of grief. What I tried to do, you know how we talked about this? I need visual things. So, you know, when you feel that you're stuck and you can't do something, or you want to go to the movies, it's like, I don't want to, is there somebody that I can go to the movies with? You know, we've got to find ways. Well, I use the Slinky. And I would have brought you each a Slinky, but these things are heavy to carry. But I would encourage you to buy yourself a Slinky. And so if we look at this, this is a protective wall. And it's very easy for us in grief to build a protective wall, a wall in which we keep people out. And it's not intentional, but we're trying to guard our hearts. And it's okay to guard our hearts, because did our hearts feel the injury? Did they feel the impact, the true physical pain? You know, so we have to find ways where this hole in the heart ends up being where we can walk through it, to journey through it, to piece through it. It's one step at a time, 1 minute at a time, 1 hour at a time, sometimes one day. Today you're here not because it's just because you have to or somebody told you. You're here because you want hope, strength, and healing. So we have to find ways in which we can create a balance. And in life, first of all, if anybody says they've been balanced all their life and never had any obstacles, I'd like to know your recipe. Because I think in my ups and downs, I've become the person that I am today. I've become the person who's pure of heart. I've become the person that I was meant to be. But I felt off balance. When Vince died, I felt like I was bottoming out. I didn't even know if I would spring back up. But as you see my hand, it keeps going up, and I'm not even moving it. But do you see, most of the time with our grief, we're going to move up and down. But if we got stuck and we couldn't function, that we were numb, that we were falling into depression, because grief sometimes can feel like depression, but it's grief. But we have to find ways. Who are our support people? Who are the people that support you? Family? Friends? Colleagues? Parkinson's Voice Project today? Yeah. So it's finding the things. If you don't have someone, there are many people around that would love to be. I go into Chesterwood Village. In fact, they've made a gift for each of you, and it's on the table as you leave. But they help me. I miss my mom. I miss my sister. They're there, and I go and see them several times a month, but they're part of my support. And then you have to look at, what are the things that bring me up? So what brings you up? We said music, right? Going to the movies. Any other things? What brings you up? Exercise is very good. Exercise, I would say, find some way every day to exercise because it helps release endorphins. Did you know that tears are good too? Because they release endorphins, almost like a natural remedy. It is like a medicine. Laughter does the same thing. Find a funny movie. But it's all about finding ways to be able to create a balance. And what I do is when I feel that life's getting the best of me sometimes, I just think, and I want you all just to do this right now, just in your hands, I want you to close your eyes, because this way you kind of get to have a slinky. I want you to feel that slinky and think about, is there an area in my life that I need to do a little bit more to create a balance? I'm off balance maybe right now. I need to breathe. So I want everybody to take a deep breath. Exhale. Breathe in. And exhale. Can you feel almost like you've got something in your hands right now? You can open your eyes now. When you're going through those life circumstances where it takes your breath away, it affects everything, I want you just to close your eyes and think, what do I need to do right now? Do I need to call my support person? Do I need to reach out to somebody and maybe become involved? What can I do to help me create that balance? Children in grief, and I know all of us here in some way may be associated with a child that's in grief. So I thought this would be really good just to share with you briefly. Never assume that a child doesn't understand. A child old enough to love is old enough to grieve. Instead, ask them about their thoughts and feelings. Remember, for me, my grandmother sharing when I was younger in life, first of all, the one who shared when she got to heaven. So that was my first picture of heaven. Then my grandmother, when my grandfather died, she ended up becoming the person that validated my feelings and emotions. I could talk to my grandmother. My mom sometimes, she was so busy with the other 5 children, and maybe sometimes I was afraid to tell her because I was afraid she would fall apart again. You know, but later in life, we were able to have great conversations, but never assume. Children need to know that death is irreversible, that all body functions, all matters of life stop at the time of death. And I think we as adults need to know that. Because sometimes we think, oh, I don't know if I can bury them. I don't know if I can do this. We have to remember, this is our people show. You know? And whatever it is that you believe that kept you alive, that's no longer there. But yet their spirit can be alive. But yet we're grieving that we wish that they were with us. Everything eventually will die. And we have to use those experiences in life. You know, like if they had a fish that died, or a turtle that died, or a puppy that died. They may grieve. But these are opportunities to be able to share. And when grandpa has died or mommy and daddy has died, become present to their present moment. Don't have it be, well, when I can get over there, this is what I'm going to do. If that child starts saying, Grandma, what do you think that grandpa would be thinking of us all right now? He never got to meet his grandpa here on earth. What do you think he'd be thinking? That was my little window of opportunity. I said, I think he'd be thinking, wow, look how beautiful my family is. I have a grandson to love. That is so awesome. I said, I think he probably spoiled you when you were up there. But it was an opportunity, And then even for my nieces and nephews who never met Vince, there's sometimes I'll say to them, tell me what you know, because you never got to meet Uncle Vince. Oh, well, my mom tells me, my dad tells me, oh, I know he was a person that loved to have fun. So see, the stories continue on. And I don't know about you, but did you have grandparents and great-grandparents? Did you hear the stories of their lives? Did you hear about grandparents that you had never met? Did you paint a picture in your head of what that moment might have been like? Well, we are the story keepers. Memories are a precious gift, so don't be afraid to share them. I think it's very, very important. Grief will come in waves for everyone. There's going to be moments for children that they're laughing one minute, crying, but it's the same way for us. Sometimes they'll act it out through activity. Sometimes there's behavior changes, regression, difficulty concentrating. I mean, that's me still. There's the fears, the nightmares, the headaches, the anxieties. Do we sometimes feel these things? Children do too. But theirs is in a little different segments, whereas ours can sometimes feel all the time. It softens. Grief stays with the child all their life, on all of the ongoing events, but it also stays with us. God bless you. They need consistency and structure. We need consistency and structure. We need to have a routine. While we might think, okay, I can't do this anymore, you might not do things the way you used to, but I think it's very important to know that routine is important. The special days, they might trigger a lot of different grief emotions. And if there's another death in a family, that can affect everyone, the ripple effect. It almost can feel like a scab has been broken open, a wound. But I think if it's been a parent that has died, it's very important for a parent to be able to set that routine. And if you have that, if it was your child that may have died, be able to help, and maybe inviting the children to go do something. But ask the parent, what is it that I can do to help you? Or if they're not asking, say, hey, would you mind taking my children to the ball game? I just need a little bit of time, and I think that they need time with you. So losses, things that complicate grief is the change in routines, changes in caregivers, financial concerns, needing to move, the worry about the food, the power, and all that. I mean, when you've been widowed, all these things can change. And the same way for a child. So expressing emotions is healthy. When I get upset, I find it helps. That's what you could say to someone. Let them know. And then you ask, what helps you? Don't just go to them and say, Catherine, so are you doing okay? Then you would say yes or no. Instead, Catherine, tell me how you're, yeah, sometimes is a great answer. But I think it's important. Don't ask just a question that, are you okay? No. Sometimes, tell me about the sometimes. Tell me about when you're not okay. I think when we can ask that, then we have that conversation that goes on. So now grief and the holidays. I think it's very important, the special days and the holidays. I know for me, the minute I heard Halloween, Thanksgiving, Christmas, all these New Year's was hard for me. All those days, when he was sick, I didn't know if we'd make it to that following year. And then finally we got to the year where he wasn't there anymore. So I think it's very important to know that your anxiety might be more stressful during this time. and that you'll notice a change in your own behavior. You might be avoiding things. It was hard to go to the store and hear Christmas music playing. To this day, I don't think it should be started till Thanksgiving, but hey, they've already started it. Halloween, he used to love to dress up. We had our own little haunted houses. Then he didn't have that. Thanksgiving, we would run all over the place. So I did something for me at Thanksgiving. I decided I was going to have Thanksgiving at my house. So I went out and bought the china, bought the new tablecloth. I wanted Thanksgiving to be the way my grandmother used to make it. And I invited anybody who wanted to come to my home because I couldn't run the routine that I had done before of going to my mother-in-law's, going to my mother's, going to this house, because it was like going around the world in 20 hours. I just couldn't do it. So I decided, let me set the table. That distracted me. And it felt good because that's what Grandma used to do. Then the aroma of the bird. I'm like, oh, I remember when I'd go to Grandma's and I'd run into her arms. She'd have her flower all over her. But I remembered that precious memory. That helped me. That helped me through my first Thanksgiving. I also had my family go to Arby's. And do you remember the green goblets that they used to give away? I had everybody go buy a green goblet so that we had enough glasses at the table and we could put our drinks in it. So it was kind of cool. But it gave me a different routine. It wasn't the same routine. So I think, we in our minds can say this is going to be a no good, horrible time. I'm not going to get through it. I can't do it. But you can change the routine up. Instead of putting up our regular tree, I decided to go and cut a tree down. However, nobody told me that I needed to anchor that tree. And I couldn't get the regular ornaments out. So, because they would have had too many raw feelings for me. So I had my family come over. I said, just go get ornaments, buy boxes, whatever you want. I'm bringing the tree. So we had the tree, we put it up, and then I thought, you know what? I think I can get the artificial tree out. I said, we'll put that. I'll put all your new ornaments on that. I said, let's take this live tree. I think I can get the ornaments out that Vince bought. I think I can do this. And like I said, nobody told me that I needed to anchor the tree. The next morning I woke, and that tree crashed, breaking every ornament but 4. All of his ornaments. There they were in pieces. That was like my life. When he died, our lives were in pieces. But there was 3 hand-blown ornaments, this big, hand-blown teardrops. I had 3 children. Do you think that was a message? And I had an ornament from Vince's original tree when he was a little boy, and the center of it was popped out. Somebody said, oh, we need to throw it away. I said, oh, no, because that hole in that ornament represents the hole in our hearts. To this day, that ornament still hangs on my tree. But I got the broom, I swept it up, and I thought, life goes on. That right there, it doesn't even touch how I feel. But we can survive, and we will make this good. So I think, when we think about those special days, look at what the roles that they played, the responsibilities, the companionship. You decide what you want to do. But talk about it with your family. If you have family living with you, you can't suddenly say, we're not going to celebrate. We're not going to do this. But if you don't want a tree, if it's too hard to have a tree, then maybe your tree can be a different one. One mother, after the death of her daughter, they used to have huge trees. She decided just to buy this white tree, and it had lights on it. And that was all that she put up. Can I tell you, it was the most beautiful tree I had ever seen. It illuminated life. She said, I sit in front of this tree every night and I think of my Miranda. It was beautiful. Find what works for you. If somebody invites you to come to their home, tell them you'll do the best that you can. You will try to be there, but you don't know how long you're going to stay. That way it gives you the out, but it also gets you out. So you can set the boundaries and have the control. You might also say, I don't know how my emotions are going to be. I might cry. That first Thanksgiving, even though I was on my own turf, we began a new tradition of saying a prayer that had two things in it. One thing that we were grateful for, and that we prayed for one thing. Well, first, I was first. And who cried first? Me. But by the time we went around the table, my kids were telling silly little things that they remembered and what they were praying for. We started laughing, and then we were fine. We had to name it and claim it. You miss them. Light a candle. Maybe have an ornament that you write a little note and that you put that in. We do that every Christmas, even with all the people that we work with. I have a plastic ornament with different colored little pieces of paper, and they will all write a note to their loved ones. And then they take those ornaments home, and then they share it with their families. Families love it. You don't want to put a tree up, you can do a little stand and just have your ornament. Say if you'd like to write a message to, your loved one, I would love for you to do that. And it's just kind of neat. And we put each year on it. We've been doing that now for 22 or 23 years. Sometimes there's anticipatory grief. The grief that comes right around the holidays. It could be intensified. So we will automatically start thinking what we don't have. So just remember, it's about creating that balance of what we do have and what we can do. Don't go too far ahead. Like if I think of Thanksgiving right now, of not having my sister here, that can kind of give me a little bit of anxiety, even though she wasn't even here at Thanksgiving. That gives me a little of anxiety because it's like, okay, this Thanksgiving I need to do this, but it's right. Come back here, Sheila. What do you need to do to create the balance? Take a deep breath and breathe. Just remember, memories are a very important gift. Gift giving. If you were used to exchanging gifts, find some way that you can still give a gift. First of all, I always bought myself a gift. I bought him even when he was alive, So why should it be different? So buying those gifts or give a gift to someone in memory of. The gift of giving. I saw here, pay it forward. That's a gift. But if you typically bought him a watch or you bought her something, buy that. Do you know how many people are in our nation who don't have someone that can give them a gift? Find that person to gift. And you know what the most precious gift is? To share with someone, I love you. To give them a gift of time. Because I think when we become present to that present moment, we see that. So remember, the fears in preparation are normal. It may be overwhelming, but look at your list of what you used to like to do and that you don't like to do now. Be mindful of it all. Again, it's about creating that and giving yourself permission. Reach out to people, but it's also a time to, sometimes you have to withdraw a little bit. Share your preparations, though, with your family so that it's not all foreign to them. And what you choose to do this year could be different next year. Examine those rituals that you liked. Remember, I had to examine it, and I didn't think I could do it. And when I think about it now, when that tree fell, I wish everybody would have seen it, because then they would have known what happened. My life was broken. But I never knew that when my life was broken and that I had that hole in my heart, that hole in my heart is still there. I just didn't realize that my heart could still continue to grow, that I could carry Vince with me, and that I could still love and be loved, that I could still be the person I am. I was a tree of life. And that first year, I went into shock. That second year, it began to bud again. And now I had no idea that my tree of life would be so full and so full of leaves. I had to choose to go on living. Live one moment at a time, 1 hour at a time, keep it simple, and do your to-do list. Just remember where you put your list. Meditate, breathe, and honor your grief. I've had so many people that I've worked with, they said, I've decided to honor my grief. Good for you, because that's important. We are going to remember them, but I want you to remember this, that it's very important to remember what today has in common with tomorrow, with special days, birthdays, and anniversaries. And that is that they have 24 hours in them. And if we break it down, if we get, sometimes I get 2 hours sleep, but I try to get more sleep than that. 4, 6, 8 hours of sleep. Then we get up, we clean ourselves up, brush our teeth, take our shower. That's another hour or two. Then we have our breakfast. By the time the afternoon comes, half the day is gone. So can we not manage another 6 to 8 hours? Absolutely. Little small increments. I'm going to see if this poem comes. So maybe we could read this, and I'm going to try this because I think it's important. And we have candles that are out there that you are welcome to take. I always have to light a candle for Vince, and there's battery candles that you can buy as well. But when I miss him and when I miss my mom and miss my sister, I light a candle. And my sister sang the song, "This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine." Well, when I light that candle, their light is still shining to me. So if you feel comfortable reading this, and if I can do this PowerPoint right, let's say this. And this poem is called "We Will Remember Them." At the rising of the sun and its going down, at the blowing of the wind and in the chill of winter, at the opening of the buds and in the birth of spring, at the blueness of the skies and in the warmth of summer, at the rustling of the leaves and the beauty of autumn, at the beginning of the year and when it ends, as long as we live, they too will live. When we are weary and in need of strength, when we are lost and sick at heart, when we have joy we crave to share, when we have decisions that are difficult to make, when we have achievements that are based on others, as long as we live, they too shall live as we remember them. So I'm going to close with this poem. There's a miracle called friendship that dwells within the heart. You don't know where it happens or where it gets its start, but the happiness it brings you always gives you a special lift when you realize friendship is God's precious gift. And I thank you for the gift of your friendship today.